So whilst, can I ask Ms. Alondra Swan to please make her way to the podium? And whilst Ms. Swan is coming, the BIU received an invitation from Ryan Robertson, Parent Chief, to participate, and you'll see, you probably have read some of this in the program this evening in my message. When Ryan asked the BIU to participate in this program, we didn't know what to expect, but we agreed to sponsor 2 of those participants. And I can tell you that the election was held on July 18th, and on July the 21st, Friday, July 21st, they had a ceremony for them at Berkeley School. And the Premier, just newly in his position for 3 days, found the time to be there. I was there with my wife, and I can tell you what we heard was nothing short than phenomenal. For what those young people learned in 3 weeks, some sign takes some of us, maybe not a lifetime, but quite a while to learn. And we just thought that as a result of what we heard, and the board made a conscious decision that we'd invite the Premier to be the main keynote speaker, but also we'll allow somewhere between 10 to 12 minutes for those 4 young people to come and address you tonight. So I want Ms. Swan to come and tell you exactly who's going to be speaking to you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alondra Swan, and I was the proud teacher and facilitator of the Future Leaders Program. I was invited by Ryan Robinson, Parent Chief, to come on board as a teacher. And, you know, it was during the summer, and one thing about teachers, for some of us, we believe that summer times are that refreshing, protected time. However, when he reached out to me and sent the course materials and said, you know, it's kind of like debate, and I've been a debate coach. He said, it's kind of like debate. You can facilitate it however way you want. I said, oh, wow. After reading the materials, this looks like something that can have a deep, positive impact for our young people. And little did I know that that was really just the first step in a 3-week-long journey that I had the honor of being able to be a part of. The idea behind the Future Leaders Program was birthed from Ryan, who unfortunately is not here tonight, but his father is here, and I want to recognize his father because he was our driver, political commentator, and question and answer person, and I appreciate the sacrifice that he gave as well. But Ryan went away to a university and was a part of a similar program, was deeply impacted by it, and said, you know, I need to bring this to Bermuda. And as a result, 17 young people started the program. This was the inaugural year, and they learned so much. And some of the material that was being presented to them was literally college level. The ages of some of the young people were middle school all the way up until high school. So the level that they had to reach was very high. The expectation for them was high. However, they reached it. And some of them, as you will hear, didn't necessarily feel that they were ready. Some came like, well, I don't think everybody else is smarter than me. I don't think I can do it. But I can tell you that by the end of this program, all of them felt not only that they could do it or achieve the level of greatness what they were reading about, which the topics range from crime, inequality, privilege, identity, social justice, and leadership. They not only were able to learn from it, but they felt empowered, which was the goal of the program. The goal was to see young people find their voice and know that they could achieve great things once they were educated and they learned about things that were happening right in their own community. So without further ado, I am going to present to you some of those who did participate. They will be presenting, and if they can come, Kay Richards, Siobhan Hotzel, Ziaje Lee, and Mr. Robert Thomas. I also want to recognize Mr. Shai-Shan Burgess and Ms. Calvina Steed, who also decided to come to support us, and I appreciate the fact that they took the time to come. Without further ado, I give you the future leaders.
Good evening, all. Thank you, Ms. Alondra, for that very warm welcome. Injustice anywhere is a threat to injustice everywhere. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and distinguished guests. With protocol already being established, it is our privilege to be speaking here to you today on our future leaders' experience and exposure we gained as a whole. So we covered 7 different topics in this vigorous 3 weeks, ranging from identity and privilege to social justice. But what stood out to me the most was crime, poverty, and inequality. And today, I'll be dissecting those topics as we did during the course of these 3 weeks. So let's talk about inequality. This is something that we all don't really like to talk about. We just like to put behind our backs and not really shine light on it. It's really the elephant in the room. But during this program, us 15, 16, and 17-year-olds had to discuss this. And we had to sit there and go through these uncomfortable topics and dissect it to the core. Things like the wage gap between blacks and whites, the wage gap between women and males. These are all uncomfortable topics, but these are things that we need to know as young people and that we need to have in our minds. Because as we grow up, we will be the ones who make a difference in these social issues. We will be the ones who will be closing these gaps, and we will be the ones to make a change in Bermuda. Furthermore, we talked about poverty. We experienced poverty in several different lights, but one that really stood out to me was when we traveled down to the Salvation Army. So we got to talk with several people, and we got to meet different people and the owner, and we did a lot of things for him. But what stood out to me the most was when we had a conversation, and he told us that, so they asked the people when they come in to stay in the shelter, do you want to stay 2 to 5 years or 8 to 10 years? And most people end up staying 15 years. People in Bermuda are struggling. People in Bermuda are going through hard times. And yes, we may be sitting here in our nice suits and enjoying this beautiful dinner, but some people don't have this privilege. The other day, I was with my mom in the car, and we were going to a picnic, and I was like, Mom, we're going to a picnic while someone doesn't even have something to eat for the rest of the week. We're going to a picnic when someone's dying of starvation. We as Bermuda need to realize that some people are in struggle and some people are in poverty. And we, as young people, need to know this, and we cannot be excluded from these statistics, because these are the statistics, like I said, that we are going to change. And we as young people need to know this. Furthermore, we talked about crime. Since the Future Leaders program, crime has been rampant in Bermuda, and it has been something that is so evident. It's like we looked in the textbook and then it was there in our faces. We talked about crime, we talked about how it starts and what's the roots and what we can do about it. And these are things that really empowered us, because crime is such a huge thing and it's so intimidating, but we are not as small and insignificant as we feel. Although we may look at a huge problem and be like, wow, I'm just a little morsel, but we are much more than that. We are powerful. We are amazing. We have the capability to solve these issues, and all it takes is for us to chain together as a community and solve these issues together. Without further ado, I would now like to introduce Ziaje Lee, who will talk about identity and privilege. Thank you.
Good evening. With great power comes great responsibility. Throughout the program, we discussed the unit of identity and privilege. This allowed us to look into the world very differently. I learned what an agent and target group is, what's an ally, how the cycle of oppression works, intersectionality, and so much more. We were able to meet with a range of leaders within the community, such as Lynn Winfield, who talked about economic intimidation, and so many more. So I want to give you an example, a matrix of oppression, which helps you to discover where you may be, either within an agent group, also known as the oppressor, advantaged and dominant, or the target group, also known as the oppressed or disadvantaged. What you do is find the intersections, the crosses between the two groups, depending on who you identify with. Take me for example. I'm a young black girl, which puts me in a target group. Yet, living in Bermuda, I have access to education, and with Christianity as my religion, I'm within an agent group. Yet take someone else, a middle-aged white woman with religious beliefs as a Jew. She's an agent because she is white, but she is within a target group because her religious beliefs is Jew and she's a woman. This allows us to see the intersectionality, which is the overlaps between being an agent or a target. We also saw the different privileges that exist and how simple certain advantages are, such as being right-handed. During the Future Leaders program, I was able to open my eyes to new ideas and develop how I look at the world around me. I now have the knowledge to stand up and debate through difficult topics that are challenging to my counterpeers. I went into the program wondering, why am I here? Why waste your summer on this? Truthfully, I imagine it to be like one of the boring classes I take in school every day. Yet when it came down to the field experiences and the connections I was able to make, I gained so much more than I could have in some boring class. Throughout the program, we were able to reflect on how we felt about the different academic knowledge and fieldwork we experienced. And as we were discussing identity and privilege, the identity that stood out to me the most had to be race. So I'm going to share with you a speech that I wrote on the racial tensions that exist in the world today. So, where does the disconnect between the blacks and whites within our society begin? How do we bridge the gap? Has 364 years plus of slavery and segregation caused such a large drift incapable of repair? Is there so much fear, hate, and envy so deeply rooted that we are incapable of healing? Why is it that we make our little bubbles and remain where we feel comfortable? Should we even bridge this gap? Or is it even a problem? When visiting the US consulate, she talked of how she has never been invited into a black person's house for dinner, even though she has invited many over to her own home. So the question is, do we look at it as she is white, that's why she wasn't invited? Or is it a matter of she's of higher status, therefore I'm embarrassed? We have to make sure that we have open minds and view issues from each angle. I'm not taking away from the fact that maybe it is a matter of race. Who really knows? We do have to think though, do we confine ourselves to bubbles? Do we feel safe within our social groups? Is it the fact that it is intergenerational trauma has caused us to stay to our own and stick with what we feel safe? I think that once we cross the bridge, we allow interpersonal isms to leave our groups behind, and therefore the gap stays open. I think that we as a society have to unite. I understand that history can never be forgotten. The lashes of our ancestors are engraved on our back, and we can feel the water flooding our lungs. But we have to learn to let go and move towards a united front of peace. Where do we start, you ask? How can we make a change and release the hate? We must start with the children. We must change the mindsets of our children. We have to improve the way they think. We have to stop them thinking that they aren't able to fit in and they have to stick with what they know. So how can we change how they think? How can we develop their young minds and shape them for a better world? How will we as young adults show them better than what we have received? What has been handed to us is a broken world filled with separation. that is being upheld by both sides of the fence. How can we expect to break a system that we as a society created? Something so simple as race, a four-letter word, so simple, yet causes such large problems. We can't eliminate race though. It's there, everyone looks at it, let's be honest. I think we can create and implement history of both races positively for empowerment and negatively to instill humility. This way we can both understand the downfalls, challenges, and victories of both parties. We have to uplift both sides of the community to create a better one, to break down walls and build bridges. Speaking of breaking down walls and building bridges, here is Siobhan to talk to you about leadership.
Go to the people, live with them, learn from them, love them. Start with what they know, build with what they have. But with the best leaders, when the work is done, the task accomplished, the people will say, "We have done this ourselves." Lao Tzu. According to the social change model of leadership development, leadership is described as a purposeful, collaborative, values-driven process instead of a title or position. This kind of collaborative process means that groups must have trust, which requires that group members act in ways that are consistent with their beliefs and values as well as the group's goals. While in the Future Leaders program, we explored some of the social challenges in Bermuda through academic study, hands-on education, and meaningful service to local organizations to develop knowledge, experience, and leadership skills that we need to make a positive change in our community. For some, the knowledge that we were exposed to may have caused a few individuals to experience moments of cognitive dissonance, anxiety that results from simultaneously holding contradictory or otherwise incompatible attitudes, beliefs. But for myself and those in my group of spectacular young adults, we were able to assimilate and appreciate the information that we were given. From day one of the Future Leaders program, we were met with many different leaders in the community that had the ability to take their experiences and aid in shaping the world around them. Influencers such as the Honorable Wayne Keynes, JP MP, shared his thoughts and values with us about being a leader and having passion. Lynn Winfield, the executive director of CURB, used her white privilege to help out the Black community. And Gina Spence of Gina Spence Productions took her bad experiences and turned them into better opportunities for others. These are the leaders in our community that swayed us into desiring change. As young people, we are often overlooked as if we could not possibly be the future of our communities. However, while in this program, I met with a plethora of young adults with the same vision and mindset that desire to see changes in their island and in their world. As Nelson Mandela once said, the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow. Whether it's through changing policies like what we did with the Department of Youth and Sport, or through building bridges like what we did with the True Stick Foundation, we as future leaders have demonstrated that we all have the power to make a difference. Speaking of the power to make a difference, I will now pass the mic to Kay Reed, who will talk about social change.
Evening. Siobhan had outlined the social change model's definition of leadership, but what is social change? I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. Angela Davis. Philanthropy, which includes relief, improvement, social reform, and civic engagement, interrupting the cycle of oppression and allies, social entrepreneurship, activist, and activism. All of these examples are positive ways which lead to social change because charity alone cannot overturn injustice. During the program, we were addressed by a few members from the MOVE organization, a group of people who wanted to be heard and express their concerns. They told us about their experiences with protesting and being activists, and despite all of the obstacles they have had to overcome, they still stand strong. We were also visited by the boxer and social entrepreneur, Nikki Bascom, whose movement is about culture and unity and trying to create the next star. His advice was to do what you're passionate about, look up to people who are influential, and lastly, when you do good, good comes back, and when you do bad, bad comes back. We also had Lynn Winfield from CURB, the advocacy group, who spoke to us about the importance of cognitive dissonance, affirmative action, intergenerational trauma, colorism, intersectionality, and the right to self-determination. At the beginning of the program, I was informed about all of the world's problems, and now I know there are ways that the problems can be resolved. I have realized there is so much more that everybody could do to improve the world, but not many people have the knowledge about the world and its problems. But also, we as a nation have become sleepwalkers and go along with the social norms because we may think that's just how the world is. It's not my responsibility. One person can't make a change. I can't make enough of a difference to matter, or I'm not an activist. So we must break the cycle of cynicism and practice the cycle of hope and repeat until a better world results. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. MK Gandhi, take action.
I would now like to take this time to thank the BIU for their endless support in this program. None of this would have been able to happen without them, and their support has definitely not gone to waste. Look on their stage. We are no longer lacking the things we need to make an impact in our community. We no longer feel like these tiny morsels who can't make a difference. We feel powerful, we feel empowered, and none of this would have been able to happen without the BIU's support into this program. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It is now up to you, all of you, to acknowledge that we as young people have a contribution that we bring to society. It is now up to you to acknowledge the knowledge and capability that we hold as young people. We don't just stick our heads in our cell phones, we don't just go on our laptops, we don't just ride our bikes along the streets and cause mayhem. We are much greater. Don't scream out my failures and whisper my accomplishments. We are much greater and powerful than proven to be. So please, don't underestimate us, but include us, acknowledge us. This is only the beginning of a lifelong, impactful journey, and we want all of you to tag along for the ride. You are the change you wish to see in the world. The change is with the youth, and the change is now. Thank you, and stay woke.